Hi, welcome to Norwegian Newcomers, the podcast where we are hearing fragments from the lives of Norway's immigrant population. Today, I'm really glad and lucky my guest is Marea. Marea, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
I
did do it. I was hearing the music.
Even without the music.
I could hear your intro music in my head, and I was already I was getting into a yoga position as I sit here.
So the music
I actually have my legs behind my head. For those of you who can't see, I'm a yogi. So this episode starts with lies on lies on lies. Just kidding.
But Marea,
Yes.
I'm really thank you that you managed to come and to.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm really curious because we know each other not so well.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew it as I told you on the way walking here that I had you in my list of wishes, potential guests that I would like to have. So I'm really glad because I don't know basically nothing about your life. I just know that you lived.
And that's how I like to keep it.
Yeah. Sorry, but it's not possible. You are already here, so you won't go home until we heard something.
Okay.
So please.
It's going to be a story tonight.
Yes. So please, for our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Marea. That question is so big.
It is, but just to introduce.
Okay. So I was born in the States, in the U.S., in North America, United States of America. All the different ways I can think of to say that. And I live in Norway now, and I've been here since 2006, which is crazy when you think about it. It went by so fast, because we're referring now to the 2006 is early 2000s, as if like a time long ago.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm born in 1975, so you can imagine.
Right, we're old.
But Marea, so you're born in USA.
I was born in the U.S.
How that happened?
How did that happen is actually very good question, considering the parents. So my mom's side comes from Norway, and they have a history book of the family lineage. So we trace back to Danish royalty. So let me just toss my hair as I say that. I'm a princess, basically. And then on my dad's side, grandfather, dad's dad, was born in Puerto Rico. Was he born in Puerto Rico? Lived in Puerto Rico, i hvert fall. If he was born in Puerto Rico, born in Africa, I can't remember. But grandmother, dad's mom, was born in France, moved to the U.S., I think, from there. She's Creole. Both of them are from the continent. Both of them are black, African. Whereabouts in Africa, I don't know. Slave trade happened, and we all lost our contacts. So I'm Creole, Puerto Rican, Danish, Norwegian, French, Black, and First Nation, Indigenous. I'm Canadian and American as well, I guess. If your parents are from somewhere, then you are that, yeah?
Yeah, that's how I consider that those are the roots.
Right? So father was born in Canada, so does that make me Canadian?
Yeah. I think also on the legal part, but also kind of roots. He was born there and spent some
right.
time.
And I use that when it benefits me. That's the nice thing about being mixed, is I have such a plethora of nations to choose from. I don't feel like being American right now. I can just slip into whatever I feel like.
But tell me, if it's not a secret, which passport you are?
I'm using the American one with shame. And this year have made it a goal that I'm going to get the Norwegian one, because now you can have dual citizenship.
No. Yeah, that's you just feel. Why?
Because I've been away for so long, I feel a bit more attached to Europe than I do to the US. Mm-hmm. Also, I've had some run-ins traveling where I think it might have been better for me to have a European passport than to have an American passport. Mm-hmm. And just because you can. Simply it's because I actually have the ability to have two, I might as well have two.
Yeah. But Marea, tell me, so you were born in USA and you lived in Seattle for how long?
I was born in Seattle, Washington, and I lived there for, I don't know. My mom had me and then moved back to, I think we moved in with my uncle. There was a lot of drama around.
Like in every family.
I am drama. I am the embodiment. I'm the manifestation of drama.
That's cool.
I know everybody who knows me listens to this and be like, yep, that bitch is right. She is. That's what we're here for. It's the reality TV here. No, so there was drama with the parents because it was a match that was not supposed to happen. My mom moved back to her family when she had me.
In Norway?
No, in the U.S.
In USA.
No, wait. Fargo, North Dakota. Yeah, that's where she moved back to when I was a baby. And then eventually to Minnesota, where I spent my, I guess what you call formative years, the junior schools. She stayed there and I moved on right after I finished school. And my dad, basically he's in San Diego and has been there for most of my life.
Mm-hmm. But can you recall in those formative years?
I remember drama in a big trailer truck driving across America with my best friend. Him sleeping and then me like turning the music on as loud as possible whenever he slept and then having him have it on silent when I slept. I was the worst. Where were we going when we did that? Yes, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I took on the character of a college student. I was not a college student.
You just took the character.
But I took on the character of a college student when it served me. And benefited from racism in that I had a brown friend who was attending Georgetown, and she would loan me her student ID card. And just the fact that we were both brown was basically all it took. So I could get into everything and anything because I had this card. I don't look anything like her. In fact, she's Indian. So,
but it works.
It was not even the same at all. But I mean, it worked. And I got cheap taxi rides. I got discounts. I got student discount life before I became a student. And it was wonderful. I learned how to do college life before I started doing college life.
You mentioned that you grew up with your mom and she was a single parent. How was that?
I don't know if that was really a thing or not, single parenting. Like, of all the friends that I had, everybody had two parents. And I remember people saying to me, like, you have to have a dad. Like, you have to know who your dad is. It's like there is no other way. And I mean, in hindsight, yes, you do have to have a dad to be conceived, I guess. At that time, you had to have a dad to be conceived. Today, you don't. But, yeah, so I didn't grow up with my dad, so I didn't know about him.
You didn't have any contact?
Not when I was younger. But it just seemed, I don't know, it was just normal to just be the two of us.
And your mom
was a hard worker.
Yeah, and the system, was it hard as
I mean, it wasn't Norway.
Yeah.
Right? She was working, she was going to college full time and working at least 2 jobs, I think. And then me, because I remember she had a paper route job. So sometimes she would wake me up at 2 or 3 in the morning. And then put me in the car, and I would sleep in the car while we would go and do the paper route until about 6 a.m. or whatever. And then we'd come back and get ready to go to school.
Yeah, but that's just struggling when
she was, but I mean, she did because when I just think of that like in terms of like if my mother had been black, it would have been an entirely different story, an entirely different upbringing, an entirely different story of what she could have. I don't want to say what she could have accomplished or not accomplished, but I mean, it's silly to pretend like racism doesn't exist and that the U.S. isn't polarizing because it really is. But she did well, and I thought we were rich. No, I didn't think we were rich, but I mean, compared, so we had...
You didn't miss anything.
I didn't miss anything. And she got to a certain point where she got a good enough job where we were able to have an apartment that had 2 floors.
Mm-hmm.
That was a mansion.
But did you dreamt or thinking at all that you will come in some point of your life that you will move to Norway?
Oh, never Norway. And the thing is, I had so many, when I look back, I've lived so many different lives. So it's kind of hard to piece them all together and like to make it make sense. Because I don't really think about that time of being that young. And if you ask me who I was raised by, I'll actually tell you, I was raised by, this is a podcast. I gotta use the right terminology.
No, please, just...
Okay. At the time, right? Remember, history, we learn things. So words mean things at certain decades. So at the time, I was raised by trannies.
That sounds so interesting.
Yes.
How that looks? Can you describe? Can you just have a picture?
The hottest person at prom. Let me just tell you. I had a drag queen beat my face, do my hair. I learned how to walk in heels from them. The dresses, like everything was amazing. But it was first and foremost tough love all the time. Mm-hmm. They were so mean to me all the time. But it was all coming from love, and they were really great people. And because it wasn't just one, it was Billy who was my mom, and then her friends as well were there, and they taught me how to parallel park, walk in heels, put on, do makeup, yell at neighbors.
It's the dream of every girl. Yeah?
It really was. It really was. I really learned how to hold my own, particularly because this was in Minneapolis, but these women came from New York, mm-hmm. and there's a huge difference between a drag queen from the Midwest and a drag queen from New York. Kind of? Well, so my birth mother is white middle class, and she is. She's not a Karen. My mother is not a Karen by any means. But definitely, they have a way of speaking when they're unhappy, and like the manager is called in, and, they have to try and put you in your place in that way, but be polite. Because the thing about Minnesota is they want to cover everything with a thing of politeness. So it's a lot, that's a lot like Norwegians. And there is... So if they don't like something, or if it's negative, they'll say, "Oh, well, that's interesting." Interesting. And in the way they say it, I can't use the word interesting anymore. Because then it was just like, ugh.
Or at least for you, that's a different meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting means not good. And then
means they won't say truth.
They won't say the truth. But they're letting you know there's something's not right there. Whereas, like, my tranny mom will just take off her flip-flop and hit you upside the head. It's a very much more direct way of doing things, and I really love it, and it really spoke to me and has stuck with me. So I'm really bad at being subtle and walking around the issues. So when I first moved here, and they were talking about getting jobs and the way that you write about yourself on a CV and how you talk about the things that you can do, you don't, like, this was years back, right? But what they would say is, instead of saying, here in Norway, instead of saying I can walk, it was a bad example. Yeah, but good. I can walk. You would say, I am good at moving my feet. I could possibly make a trip if it was needed. If this is, you know what I mean? Like, this is long walk around getting to what you actually can do, so that you don't come across as arrogant or something. And I am not of that nature. So it's very difficult for me. So people think a lot of times that I'm confrontational because I'm direct, but I'm not actually that confrontational. Especially the longer I've been here, I've gotten more subdued by the passive aggressiveness that is Norway. Mm-hmm. So I'm good at being passive aggressive as well. But if you're going to come at me, I'm going to let you know I'm not the one. Get all that stuff out of the way. It's not A. If it's A or B, just tell me if it's A or B. don't spend time in between, because there's nothing in between. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, or
there's not the space there. Like that's
not in communication,
right?
Maybe in something else could
philosophy speaking. Sure, there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff between A and B.
Yeah.
But if I'm asking you, is it A or B? Just tell me.
Can you tell me a little bit about your Norwegian family?
My mom came from a Norwegian old school Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was racist.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like black people, brown people at all. So the drama of me existing was beyond belief. But also that she had her ways. She has her ways of she was, I think it was first Lutheran and then over to evangelical. And none of those paths really made any space for, I didn't see it then, but anything that wasn't, it had to be Anglo-Saxon heteronormative. And then I was raised by drag queens. And it just seemed, it all to me was very natural. So I was being raised as a young person to believe in the Christian mythology, and I was seeing in the world that it wasn't as cut and dry as they tried to make it seem. So I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of problems growing up. How to deal with a Christian upbringing and yet be... Because I never came out as gay, and I wouldn't say that I am now. But I was more connected to women. I was more attracted to women when I was younger than I was attracted to men. But that was obviously just not an option whatsoever. So I grew up with this sort of like, this is what you're supposed to be, but then this is what you actually are is a different thing. So it was very difficult to maneuver.
To maneuver and to kind of discover. Can you say now that you to what you believe in or belong to?
No.
And that's okay.
No, I can't. And that's the weirdest part about it as well. No, because I remember, especially when I was younger, there was a camp that I was sent to every summer that was a Christian camp. And the older you get, that you can no longer be a camper, but you could be a counselor, or you could work in the kitchen or work on like different things on the camp. And I was there as a camper, and then when I got too old, I didn't want to be a counselor because I felt very uncomfortable with the idea of me counseling people about Christianity. It just didn't seem right to me. But I felt like it was something I had to do, so I would go there every summer. And I would like go out into nature and get on my knees and be like, God, give me a sign, make me holy, give me a sign, give me a sign, give me a sign. There was never a sign, or at least it was, but it wasn't the sign I was looking for. So yeah. And I remember also my mom at one point asking me to make more friends with Black people. And I found that to be so weird because I thought that it was so random. I mean, the question came out of, or the question came out of nowhere. They literally came out of nowhere. Like, I want you to have more Black friends. And I thought, what? Why? What? It didn't connect with me. Like, why would you ask me to pick friends on race? And I get where she was coming from now. Like, she wanted me to not just be around white people because I wasn't white. So she wanted me to have a different experience. And she did small things that I didn't notice. Like, I think I was in 4th grade maybe. And we had so polarizing when I think about this. I grew up in a white ass neighborhood. So we had one Black teacher in the entire school. And she wasn't even specifically my teacher. I didn't take her class per se. But I remember suddenly, and kids are so dumb, we don't catch on to things. Because I was suddenly doing after school things with her, with the teacher. But it was just the two of us. There were no other students. Like, she was taking me to poetry, like slam poetry meetings and Black art installations and like basically she was taking me to all of these black things. And there was never this, you were black, so this is what this is. It was just like giving me the education, like just talking to me about all these different things. And I didn't even put together, I never even thought about like, why are we doing this? I'm just like, oh, this is cool. This is nice.
You enjoy.
And it wasn't until like later I was like, oh, so my mom was like, okay, right. I see what's happening there.
But since you mentioned that your grandpa,
my mom's dad was racist.
Your mom, yeah. Did how?
I never met him.
Yeah, but that's...
But we got bad blood.
I was guessing that you probably never met him. But what do you how do you think that he did make an influence on your mom?
He made a huge influence on her. Huge influence because she was the youngest of 7, and it was all boys except for the firstborn. My aunt was a woman, obviously, and then my mom came.
Okay,
last.
so 7 to
so
girls.
It was all boys, and then came my mom, and so she was daddy's little girl. So I think there was a lot of drama. It was really difficult for her, I think, to have to admit to out of wedlock pregnancy.
Yeah, but that's...
How, and this is before the 80s, before that was the thing.
Marea, how old you were and how it happened that you moved to Norway?
See, what happened was I was done with some other states and gone through some traumas and blah, 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 and ready to move on. So what you need to know is my cousin, who was a very good friend of mine, was a beatnik. And she was older than me by 5 years or so. And she would travel around. She would drive around the U.S. She was doing... Do you know what a beatnik is?
I'm guessing. But maybe someone doesn't know. So
right. So let me just find the actual technical term for beatnik. Today, I guess we would say that a beatnik is like the original hipster. Yeah. But it is a young person in the 50s and early 60s belonging to a subculture associated with the Beat Generation. And the Beat Generation was Jack Kerouac, Williams and Burroughs, and all these different like authors were beatniks, where they would like jump onto a train, ride it to the next town, drink a jug of wine, meet a bunch of people, smoke elendy amounts of cigarettes, write stuff, go to stuff, do stuff.
So with the cousin?
So she was this. But I mean, obviously she wasn't a beatnik because beatnik, I think it was the 50s and 60s. I'm pretty sure beatnik was done by 69. But anyways, so what had happened was she wrote me a letter, this beautiful beatnik letter. God, I wish I still had that. That was just like, the whole letter was poetry. And it wasn't even meant to be a poem. It was just like, now is the time, you are of this age, this and this has happened, and your development and culture, and we need to get out there in the world and taste it, and da-da-da-da, and meet me at this gas station on this highway at this time. And like, and it wasn't like, you're like meet me at the corner of whatever and ever downtown. Yeah. It was like literally like, meet me in the bumfuck middle of nowhere on the border of Minnesota, North Dakota, or somewhere. And the greatest thing about it was that I told my mom, and she was like, yeah, I know where that is. I'll take you there.
Okay, yeah.
So my mom literally drove me there. And when my cousin was there, but actually my cousin was at the gas station, like across the street. It's like literally a highway with nothing and then 2 gas stations across the street. Yes. And she's like, oh, it's that one. Okay, whatever. So she picked me up and we went on this road trip from North Dakota down to Taos, New Mexico, which is where she ended up moving to. So we went down there to check out how to do that. But the journey itself was, man, it's the journey, not the destination, you know? It is just...
That's the thing, yeah.
So it was basically everything they tell you that it is in movies and more. The cross-country road trips are as magical as you think they are. They are wild. They are wild. And I learned from her a lot of things, and just that became suddenly that my passion was to just keep moving. So then I kept moving. And I kept moving from state to state. And I lived in each state for maybe about 1.5 to 2 years.
And then suddenly Norway. How? From the road trip with the cousin, then trip around the USA?
I went to Iceland for a while because my best friend was living there. And then it was there where we decided Iceland was not going to be the place because I had no connection there. And I needed to move to somewhere where I had a connection. And so Norway was the obvious connection, since I actually had a literal book of my family history to tie to that country so I could go there.
And still cousins and family?
I have cousins here and family here and yeah, the whole
Did they
package.
know that you are coming, or you just...
I met them when I first got here. We don't hang out now. And it's not in any... There's no bad blood or anything. It's just...
Nothing,
You know, we didn't know each other beforehand. Came here, we met each other, but we don't actually have anything in common besides Schlecht, right? Like, because they're not even... Because my last name is Vigså, and they're Olsens or something like that. So we're not even... Like, we're distant cousins. However, fun fact for the readers. There is a small little town in the mountains, southwest from Bergen. A town called Vigså. Because the history will let you know that my last name is Vikeså. And then when the family members went over to the US, they didn't have time for that language. So then they changed the names, the spelling of the name. So it's the same name, just Old Norwegian, New Norwegian kind of thing. So I went to that town when I first moved here. So I have there's a whole town named after my last name. Everyone there is my relative.
And that's why you
first moved here, because it's like, yeah, I have relation.
Yeah.
And it'll get me into Europe. And I just needed to get away from the US because it was the second round for President Bush Jr. And I was completely shocked that he won for a second time. I had surrounded myself with so many liberals that it did not come into I could not conceive of a second term. So when that happened, I was like, I'm really in a bubble. This really isn't... It's when I started to learn that, there really is two different types of Americas. And even then, I didn't know. I was thinking it was like, there's liberal America and there's conservative America. That is not true. I mean, yes, there is that. But the real division is there's white America and then there's the other America. And that will be for any minority. So what we saw that specifically with, so weird to say it, with the storming of the Capitol. And a lot of people were like, this isn't America. And a lot of Black people have been like, this is exactly America. This was no surprise for Black America to see that happen. Whereas white America, they were like clutching their pearls. And I also have pearls because I'm Danish royalty.
Not to forget.
Okay.
So, what were the memories in that first month, weeks that you just came to Norway?
Well, I was nervous because I knew I was coming. I'd only studied at the university about Norway and then had my family's version of Norway. My family's version is a very old Norway, so I wasn't really relying on that at all. But I was a little concerned that I might be the only person of color in the entire country. Oh, that's so American. To assume that I was going to literally be the only person of color in an entire country.
Not town, but country.
Right? Not even the town, just the entire country. So I was very nervous about that when I first got here. And I did a study program when I first came here. So I was at the university and I was with a lot of, it was just an American group of students. And some of them were very American.
Meaning?
Just mean like everything you think of when you think of an American and the negativism, that was them. They couldn't grasp the concept of hour changes, like 7 o'clock is 19, but in the US it's 7. They don't understand what that would mean. So they book a flight for 7 o'clock because they mean 7 o'clock at night. So you should understand that I mean 7 o'clock at night, even though this entire country runs by 19 instead of 7. You know what I mean? Like
So
that
not so
kind of
open
stuff.
for
Right? I'm going outside of my country, but you need to adapt to me while I'm doing this.
yeah.
While I was an American student amongst Americans, I was making sure everybody we met knew I was Canadian.
Not to mix you with the
My
other.
dad's from Canada, so I'm actually not American. Except for if I talk like that and then he was American. You know what I mean. But I did get a lot of the go back to where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be interesting. The go back to where you came from thing was interesting for me because I never understood if they meant, okay, go back to America because you are American, or go back because you're black, go back because you're fat. You know what I mean? Like I had all these others of me. I have so much others. You know, I'm fat, I'm brown, I'm black, I'm woman, I'm pseudo queer, like all these different things. And because I'm so mixed race, and because I'm light skinned, you can't quite place. Like I feel like people's brains are kind of like going in hyperspeed when they see me, like, wait, because they want to place you to know what to do, and then they're like,
but that's also I would say in general majority of people like to know where you came from, what's your background, blah blah, that they can place you somewhere to say you are this or that and that. But do you have any concrete example that you experienced racism here?
There was a time when someone told me to go back to where I came from, here in Oslo. That was a wild experience. And I was the only person of color in that situation. So it also dictated how I was going to respond. Because it was at a bar, and there was just some dude at the bar who was like, well, maybe we should go back to where you came from.
Why? Was she drunk?
Exactly. I don't know why. It was a dude. I don't know why he said it. Luckily, I had a white friend who was, if you can imagine a pit bull just attacking someone, that's what she looked like at that moment. It was really adorable to watch her just go into pure rage on my behalf and go at this person. And I really needed it at the time, because at the time I couldn't speak Norwegian. So he said it to me in English. And it would have been wonderful for me to come back at him in Norwegian and put him in his place, but I didn't have the skills. So luckily I had someone who could do it for me. But it stuck with me obviously, it stuck with me forever, because I still think about it now, or I still remember it now. But
But that happens once? Or more?
Well, to being that blatant. Because I call that, like, that felt like Southern racism. You know what I mean? Like, go back where you came from. It's just so blatant.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think I was kind of put off because I didn't think Norwegians were that blatant. So that was wilding for me.
Tell me, what you are finding as similarities or differences between American and Norwegian society?
So when I first moved here, I was trying to hide that I was American because I knew the negativisms. I felt the negativisms, and that was the reason that I moved. So I could understand why people would be mad on us. As the years went by, I started to feel like there was a lot of like, everybody had their opinions and their comments on how they felt that we were doing things in the US. And I was kind of like, yeah, but what are you doing here? And I feel like there's a lot of like, I can say that about you, but I'm not reflecting about myself. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I was kind of like, you Norwegians are putting yourselves on a pretty high pedestal when it comes to insulting America. Yet when I look around, y'all are biting every style we Americans have. American pop culture is just being devoured by Norwegians. And it's so interesting that you love to take our culture, but then you also love to talk shit about our country. So at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm done with that. So then I began to embrace being American. And that's kind of like also because I never saw myself as part of the diaspora. And that was kind of, it still is wild to me that I'm actually part of the diaspora. I never considered myself to be that because I was raised white. And for some reason, I just thought that I didn't get to be a part of it because I was raised white. Like, I have a black dad, yeah, but most of my cultural teachings have been white, so I can't really be a part of a black culture, an international black culture. But being here, and I was a volunteer for African History Week the first year, and the second year I worked for them putting together an art exhibition and collaboration to the festival. And doing that, and then meeting Africans from the diaspora and from the country, just all over, meeting here and getting a whole new perspective on blackness that I hadn't seen so much in the US, because in the US it's mostly we don't know our history. We don't know where in Africa we come from. And I was also at this point where, like, I didn't like to call myself African American, because I thought, I can't tell you where in Africa I come from, so why can I claim Africa? I'm black. I'm not African American, if you know what I mean. And then coming here and meeting all these African Norwegians and how they communicated and seeing like this. And I remember having a conversation with Nozizwe, name dropping. For those of you who don't know, you need to know. Nozizwe is a soul singer from South Africa who is Norwegian, South African, South African, whom I met through African History Week. I was coming at her, we're like, oh, I'm doing this burlesque and I don't know how the black community feels about it, because, you know, it's all weird and stuff. Like, I don't know the dynamics. And she was like, it's so funny that you think there's an African community in Oslo. Like, there's just one community that's all of us. And I was like, at that time, I really thought, oh, skin folk is kinfolk. And she taught me that is not the truth. I started to learn more about myself as a person of color in a European white society.
Yeah.
Because I've been a person of color in a white society for many times, but coming here in a new society that is theoretically not American, but loves to take on its cultures, it was really weird. And I learned a lot about myself as a black person and started to grow more and become, I don't know if you can become more black. Yes, you can.
But
I did.
Yeah. And your identity. Yeah. So you meet that here.
I'm much more of a proud black woman now than I was when I was living in the US. Mm-hmm. Now it's just, I will scream it from the rooftops.
You mentioned something about Black History Month.
I think this will make this the third year of Black History Month in Norway. African History Week was a festival that was a week-long festival that happened once a year when I moved here. I understood that was an African festival, and I never connected that with Black History Month. Those were two very separate things. Mm-hmm. And as far as I knew, Norway didn't have a Black History Month. But Norway has had one now because of Ida Evita de Leon. Ida Vita on Instagram. This girl is the founder of Black History Month and lots of other stuff. Personal things have happened in my life that I haven't been able to be involved with it as heavily as I would like to. Also, it's a struggle for me because I feel personally like I always have to be so fully involved in everything black in this country. And that's very difficult because everything black in this country is more like African in this country than it is black. There's a difference between black and African, right? There's black as an American diaspora. African is, well, countries within the continent of Africa. And like all these different cultures of blackness that are separate. And they all have their events and their things going on here. So I understood now, and it's just like, there's no one black culture here. For me, I feel I've been feeling, especially when I started burlesque, I'm the first black burlesque performer in this country.
In Norway, yeah.
In Norway. And I'm not sure on the dates, but I think I might be the first in all of Scandinavia. I'm at least the second in all of Scandinavia. There's another one in Sweden. I'm not sure if she's still performing or not. There's more now there than there were before, but that I'm aware of. There's me, and then there's some in Sweden, and then that's it. And so I felt a lot of pressure to represent the entire blackness of like all shades and all continents and all countries. So it was really difficult because I only have my experience. I can't represent South Africa. It's just not going to happen. It is important for me to represent black women of the diaspora or of whatever. So every act that I do is based on, if not one specific Black woman, it's on Black women in general. And I felt a lot of pressure when I first started doing this to be the voice of and to give voice to. And there's been more and more performers of color in the world now since I've started. So I feel a little less pressure that I need to do that. But within Scandinavia, it's still just me. But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize, I can't just be doing this just to be the Black person doing this forever until the next one comes. At some point, I got to do what's best for me and not what's best for...
Or you did your part in things that you believe in, that you did that 100%. So it's...
Right. I did my part.
It's
been documented.
Yeah.
So we good. But there's been the racism here is like the North in the U.S. It's subtle, and they try to walk around it in certain ways. It's the way like, oh, you speak such good Norwegian, and
that exists.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's I don't feel the need to explain it, because I feel like brown and Black people listening to me already know what they've already know it. And white people, if you don't know it yet, you should. I'm not here to teach you. And that's actually that is something I've learned within the last couple of years. I am done teaching. For me, for a long time when I first moved here, I felt it was my responsibility to educate Norwegians I ran into about racism. So there was a guy, I was at a bar with some friends, and this guy said, there's a big fat nigger right there. Ser en stor neger eller et eller annet som står der, pointing at me. And I was like, okay. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm in the mood to educate. So the library is open. Come on in. And I told him, these are the words you can't use. This is why you can't use this. And I was actually I was astoundingly patient, astoundingly kind, considering who I am as a person and the fact that I'm royalty. I'm just telling you, this man was so lucky that night. But particularly because I remember another Black woman was like, how could you bother with that? How the fact that you could give the time to him from what he just said, and the fact that you didn't just bop him upside the head. And I have no idea why I didn't. And now it's 2021, so there's no excuse anymore for you that you maybe didn't know that naked doesn't fly anymore. There's no more time for that. And we have La Google, aka Google. So I feel like there's just no excuse anymore. There's a Norwegian documentary about Norwegian trading slaves back and forth. So Norwegians made a lot of money on the slave trade. They'd made money from the things that were traded with slaves, and also some Norwegians actually had slaves. And this is gold. Here's why it's gold. Because for years while I would see everyone was like, you need to know your history. Norwegians don't do that. We're not that kind of people. We were not involved in these things. How could you think this? And now the clap back is real. Woo! Watching that I was so vindicated. It was the first time I've ever watched a slave documentary and been like smiling. I was like, ooh, Norwegian, you tried to say some shit that wasn't true. It's a recommendation in the fact that it's because it existed. In terms of documentaries, it's sad, but whatever. A recommendation is Enslaved documentary on NRK with Samuel L. Jackson, because Samuel L. Jackson is basically the man. So I suggest that you see that. But for me, my point is that when I was first here, there was a lot of negating truths about racism in this country. And now, particularly with what everyone has seen with Trump, that you can see how dangerous it is to do that. I feel like white people, racism was created and started by white folk, and racism is going to be solved by white folk. We have done what we need to do. We Black folk have educated you. We have been there for you. We have placated you. We have taken your shit. We have helped you out. We have guided you, and we're done with that. And now it's your turn to learn and to change and to make the change. Because we've made the change. We feel a certain way. We're trying to change things and do what we can. And quite honestly, as the oppressed, there's only so much we can do because white people are running the show. Whether I agree with it or not, that's how it is. So y'all need to change shit.
Unfortunately, we need to end this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope that you play me off with some Missy Elliott or some real black ass music.
That will be in the second season.
You can open me with your yoga inspired music, but play me off with your black ass music.
Okay, I'll see what can I do. Thank you, Marea. Unfortunately, we can't pay right now the license for the music and to use music that we actually want to use or our guests want to use. But we hope in the nearest future we will be able to do that. And speaking of that, you can support us on Patreon and maybe to make that with music or some other improvements easier. Thank you.